The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Mariam. Also joined with me in the show is
Alia.
And we're also joined with two very well esteemed guests who I will be introducing shortly. Today's topic, we'll be talking about Muslims in the workplace. The reason why we're doing this is because we want to kind of highlight how we can navigate successful careers as Muslims and the challenges we are confronted with because of our identities. Alia, how can they join in the conversation with us?
You can join in by calling 01582 48182 or WhatsApping us on 07779 48182.
You can also join us on Facebook Live, where you will be able to see your thoughts on the comment section, and we also are on TikTok and Instagram. We would love to hear your thoughts. So I'd like to just have a very warm welcome to Farah and Samra. So in today's show we will be discussing about their successful careers, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction of them. So Samra, she has had 7 years of experience in the tech industry. She has worked with giants like IBM, Colt Technology Services and ServiceNow partners. She has worn many hats, excelling in product management, inside sales, strategic sales, and is been working in marketing over the last 5 years. Currently, she's making waves as a marketer in the non-profit Chartered Insurance Institute, and we're very pleased to have her on board. So, very warm welcome to you, Samra, and thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. And Farah, I've been joined with Farah, who is also working in. So Farah also has 4 years experience in cybersecurity, and she has worked across 4 different industries, and she works in telecommunications and consulting. So again, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to having this really robust discussion about Muslims in the workplace. I think we all can, as working professionals, it's very important to highlight the experiences that we have, but also talking about the challenges we're confronted with. So before we even delve into the main topic, we have this segment called Thought of the Week, where we talk about something insightful, a reflection, or even a personal anecdote. And I'm going to start off with Farah to share her Thought of the Week for this show.
I think for me is sometimes you can do things quietly in the background rather than kind of shouting out about it loudly and still get things done.
That's a very, very short but very pertinent Thought of the Week. Alia, what is your Thought of the Week?
I think my Thought of the Week kind of links in with the topic, and it's that your life doesn't start at 18 years old. It's not where it starts.
That's interesting. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure once you come out of college and once you finish high school that, you have to choose your career, and this is where you start and this is where you end, and so forth and so forth. But it's not really the end, like you can choose what you want to do now, and if that's not what you want to do later, then you can choose you can do whatever.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've talked in multiple shows in terms of, I think in school you're kind of forced to kind of pick one career route, but actually once you leave university or once you leave college, you understand about transferable skills. And even if I reflect on my own experiences, I did a literature degree and then I worked in finance. So I think a lot of people kind of think that there's only one route that you can take, but that's not the case. And I think through this show, hopefully we'll be discussing and dispelling some of these myths. Samra, could you tell us your Thought of the Week?
So my Thought of the Week is, it was actually something that someone said to me today, that I was just talking to them about a hard time, and they said that this too will pass. And it is very true. We often forget when we're in difficult situations that we will make it out at the end, and the moments will pass.
I think that's very relevant, especially if you're in whatever kind of aspect you are in your life. Sometimes we get very bogged down with kind of the granular details, but sometimes we forget that actually this is all very temporary. And as we know in Islam, with hardship there's ease, and we know that's guaranteed. And I think as human beings, we're accustomed to thinking about having certainty, and this life is very uncertain. And so the fact that we know that Allah is going to take care of us, and we know the outcome is with Him, all we can do, whatever we have in our dispense, that's all we can take care of. So thank you for sharing that very insightful Thought of the Week. My thought of the week is just very simple. It's very basic. Go get some sunshine. I think it's a very lovely weather. I know it's been raining in the last few days, but I think since there's more daylight compared to winter now, I think it's really important to take care of your well-being. And I think having that exposure to nature is very, very important. And I think we're talking about Muslims in their workplace, but I think one of the things that we should actually also discuss is about the well-being aspect, in terms of how do we take care of ourselves when we're sitting, especially if you're working in desk jobs. And I know earlier you're doing placements in the hospital, so that's a separate discussion that we will have. I think it's really important to go actually get some sunlight, because I think for us as human beings, we need to ensure that we're having that contact with nature. And I think there's so much research suggesting how important it is in terms of even in terms of vitamin D, and making sure that we get that, and also in terms of just walking outside and taking care of our well-being and our health. So my thought of the week really is just try to get a walk in. And recently I've just updated my phone in terms of the health app, and just looking at my steps is quite motivating. So just try to kind of incorporate some healthy habits in your routine, and just try to get outside. I think really take advantage of this, because I know in winter a lot of the times we just stay at home because it's too cold. So I definitely would encourage everyone, just try to get out. Okay, so that is our segment of Thought of the Week. Now we'll be moving on to a segment that we do only exclusively with our guests, just to warm them up. So this segment we'll be asking would you rather questions, just to kind of warm people up. And I'm going to start off with Samra. So the first question I have for you is, would you rather always speak your mind or never be able to speak again?
Oh, it's such a hard one. I would rather always speak my mind, and the reason I say that is by nature. I like to think I'm someone who stands up voices as well as my own, and I think that that's a pivotal part of also like who I am, and also how we can also better the world and our societies. So I would rather not be silenced.
That's amazing. I think I can resonate with that. I think, especially earlier, once you get into the workplace, you realise how important it is not to be censored, and to be able to take care, to be able to kind of be unapologetic about your identity. And I think that we're going to be discussing that. So thank you for sharing that. Alia, I have a question for you, which might not be as deep as the last question. Would you rather know the truth about everything, or be able to forget anything you want?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably forget everything, or like forget whatever I want to forget. I feel like there's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of I don't want to say pain. I want to say there's just a lot of hardship with knowing everything. You have to take accountability of what you know and what you don't know. But when you choose to forget, it puts you just in an easier position in this life. And obviously, as you said, it's temporary. Rather make it easier and get to the next life easier, rather than choose the hard route.
That's interesting. Farah, what's your thoughts on that? What's in terms of that question?
So can you repeat that?
Yeah, I can repeat that. So, would you rather know the truth about everything, or be able to forget anything you want?
I think forget everything that I want. I think you just have an easier life, rather than holding on to negative emotions.
Yeah, like silly little things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Samra, I'm quite curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I actually agree with both. So I would rather probably forget everything, because I think, as rightly pointed out, it would probably ease some harder feelings that we face as humans, especially where pain is prevalent. But equally, I'm willing to play devil's advocate and say I might want to know everything, so then I'm kind of in the know and aware of the truths of the world and the truth of things around me. It's a tough question, to be honest.
Yeah,
you benefit from both.
I think there is advantages and disadvantages of both. Interestingly, I would actually rather know the truth about everything. I think forgetting anything you want, I feel like the lessons that I've learned that are very crucial for me to develop and to become robust, if I had the option to forget it because of the imminent pain that I had, I think I would just choose to forget it. But actually I wouldn't have hindsight, and I think for me, having hindsight allows me to, it's a catalyst for me to kind of develop. So I think whilst knowing the truth of everything also has its drawbacks, because you're just always going to be aware of everything, and I think sometimes that's quite heavy, especially if you're exercising emotional intelligence and you just know everyone else's pain, that can be quite heavy, and you have to be really you have to have the ability to draw boundaries. But I think forgetting everything wouldn't help me personally. So that was quite interesting to hear all your thoughts on that. Okay, I'm going to say maybe a little bit more light-hearted question. And we'll start with you, Samra. Would you rather have spaghetti hair, or would you rather have maple syrup sweat? Which is a bit of a funny question, but have a think.
I would rather have spaghetti hair. Because I genuinely don't like maple syrup as well. The sweet and the stickiness is too much. Whereas with spaghetti, oh god, yeah, and it's up there, so you could kind of get rid of it. So
That's fair. I like how you thought that through. Alia, what would you say?
I'd just go bold. You know, I wouldn't have spaghetti. But then I'm thinking about it, and you have hair everywhere. It's a bit like you have spaghetti everywhere. I mean, is it like cooked spaghetti? Is it like?
It's quite ambiguous. The question is up to
even
you.
maple syrup and sweat. Is that like?
You think about the consistency.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. This is a hard one. This is harder than the last question.
Oh.
I'm gonna go for the maple syrup. As weird as that sounds, because I feel like it'd break me out. No, it wouldn't. That's the opposite of what I'm saying. Oh, I don't know.
Tough question.
What about you, Miriam?
I think spaghetti hair. I think I'd cut it all off. I
You
think
just go bold.
that's the solution for me, and I wear hijab, so
You
it's
look cute bold.
I think it will work for me. Farah, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd be spaghetti here.
Yeah, I think we all we're very conscious, and we had maple syrup sweat. Okay, so another question I have for you is, would you rather be able to change one decision from your past, or have the power to predict one decision in your future? And I'm going to start off with Samra.
See, going back to your point earlier about learning from the past and like from lessons in life, I'd like to think I wouldn't change anything from the past. As much as depending on the day, it would probably alter. But if I could make a decision for the future, maybe, yeah, I would change that. I think so. And it's because I don't know what the future holds, where I've already seen and done the past.
It's a very fair point. Farah, what's your
It
thoughts?
depends.
I think being able to change a decision in the past. I think because that can obviously change your future.
That's one very interesting. Is there anything particular you're thinking about that made you come to that conclusion?
No, I'm just thinking, for example, if you made a decision and you've done something in this life and you feel like, you know what, if I changed something in the past, my life could have been in a different direction.
Interesting. Alia, what's your thoughts?
I think we're changing stuff in the past. I feel like that's just. I don't know. I don't think I would choose that option. I think I would change something in the future. I mean, it'd be nice to change stuff that's happened in the past, but if I did, like, I feel like my life would be completely different to how it is now, because I know there'd be one decision that I would make and it would just change everything. In regards of, like, do we get to choose a decision in the future, like what the decision is about, or is it just like a
I think it's quite open-ended, so it's really up to you.
I mean, if there was one decision in the future that I knew for sure that I could change, then yeah, maybe the question, like, I'd lean more towards the future rather than the past.
Yeah, I think for me as well. I think for me, I don't want to change my past. I think it's mainly who I am today. So, but then as well, if you have knowledge of your future, I do feel like I would be so fixated in trying to make it so perfect.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one. Okay, my next question is: would you rather have the ability to talk to animals, or be able to speak to every human language fluently? Samra, what's your thoughts?
Do you know what? I was going to say the first one until you gave me the second option, because sometimes in this world, animals seem better than humans at this point. But then to be able to communicate with people all around the world, I think that's absolutely amazing. Imagine the stories. Imagine even the history that you would come to know, and the lessons and people's paths that you could imagine, the inspiration you could take from people. So I would rather have the latter, and imagine how many people you could help. yeah, I think that would be a superpower in itself.
I agree. I completely concede with that point. Farah, what's your thoughts?
I agree with Samra. I think being able to speak every language, because you can communicate with everyone, and like Samra said, the stories will be great.
I think I talk to animals. To be honest, I don't think I'd choose the languages question. I don't really know how many people I would talk to in my whole life. Like, would I even get around to talking to more than 4 people? No, probably not. But I think definitely talk to animals. I'd like to see their perspective on certain things.
What kind of things would you ask if you could speak to an animal?
I'd ask my cat where he goes.
Ah.
Where he goes. Where do you go every night? What do you do when you come home? You know, how do you feel in this house? Just see. I feel like animals are so pure. Like it's weird.
Yeah.
But they're so pure. I'd like to know how my fish think.
That's
What foods
really
they like.
interesting. I think we undermine how much emotions animals have
Yeah.
and how much they can actually empathize with
Yeah.
you. Recently, like one of my friends, her father passed away, Allah yarhamah, and her cat would just sleep in their dad's room for like the whole week. And I just think that's you undermine how much emotions animals have, and then we undermine how the lack of emotion humans have. So there we go.
That poem about the spider. Have you heard about it?
No,
You haven't
care to
heard
share?
It's really sad actually. It's like my sister doesn't like spiders. When she heard it, she just, and every time she looks at a spider, she's like, I can't do it. But it's about I just remember one line of the poem. And it says, "Was my only crime like being seen?" You know, like I mean, when I'm saying it doesn't sound as deep as in comparison to when you read it. But it was more of my only, crime was being seen, literally living,
Wow.
and it was like, it was just crazy depressing. Like it was, I think it was like from the spider's point of view, and it was like, oh, maybe if I had a like a fluffy tail and a tongue, and maybe if I looked like this, then I'd get the same affection that you give these other animals. But because I'm skinny and scraggly, you don't want to show me that love.
Oh.
I think that what kind of strikes me, I just think what's happening around the world is the only reason that they come from a certain area in the world that they are being massacred. And I think that's something that that poem is very pertinent. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Samra, do you have any thoughts?
On the first part, sorry, on the poem, or the
From the
second
poem.
part that you've just mentioned there, sorry.
Just any thoughts you have in the poem.
On the poem, I agree with the poem because and that's why when you first asked the question about speaking to animals, at this point in the way the world is, and we've turned such a blind eye for almost 100 years to our fellow Palestinians, and how much it's affected the rest of us as well. I just sometimes think in that sense animals might be better, and then equally as much I think we forget that animals are also Allah's creation, even an ant. Things that we might walk past might be an inconvenience to us every day in our daily lives, or we might even be scared of. I think I understood the line in the poem when you said it without the full context of the poem as well, and I think it needs to be said sometimes that they're just trying to coexist as well like the rest of us, and you're right. I think sometimes maybe, as I've said, it's an inconvenience, or we, with our selfish needs, stomp them out. And didn't like a spider protect the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well? So we forget the power of animals.
I say all of this, but I'm really scared of spiders. And I'm also scared of cats, and I'm scared of most animals.
Really?
Yeah, same.
Oh my god.
So, I just run away. But, I'm not cruel to animals, but
I feel like I'm
scared.
more scared of people than animals at this point.
I can resonate, but I think I'm very more scared of animals. I run. I went to Turkey recently, and I'm very scared of cats. It's just very anxiety-inducing, but that's a separate conversation. Okay, I think that was. Thank you for sharing that poem. I think it's very insightful, and I think we can resonate in so many different levels. So we are going to be coming to the end in the first half, but I just want to ask a couple of more questions before we do delve into the main topic, which I'm really excited to be discussing. The next question I have is, would you rather live a short life of adventure or a long life spent in comfort? And I'm going to ask Farah this.
That's tough. I would like to do both. I would like to have a comfortable life, but also I'd love to travel as well, so that's a tough one.
the question asks or, so you have to pick one.
Oh no.
I think a life of comfort. I'm just a bit of a homebody sometimes.
I 100% agree. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like a long life of comfort would maybe get too comfortable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
Yeah.
can you have some adventure?
No, I think it's very binary. You have to choose.
It's purely just sitting in your house.
Comfort can be described and defined in many multiple ways.
That's true. That's very true.
Samra, what's your thoughts?
I would probably choose the adventure part, and it's because the world has so much to offer if you just give it a chance and you go to the right places to find it. And I also think sometimes that's the thrilling side of it, experiencing the adventure in life itself.
100%.
But I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, and
Can you tell us any experiences that you've had a lot of adrenaline in?
oh god, sorry, I'm just going a bit blank at the moment, trying to think of one.
Any
I
interesting
love
travels?
I love high speeds.
Oh wow! I can see you're in a car.
So, I think the last most exciting. Yeah, I think one of the most last fun experiences I did was in Morocco, taking quad bikes out into the desert. And these things aren't like the most UK safety standard, to the point, wallah girls, they were igniting and starting the car by putting two wires together. And I remember having a bit of anxiety as I got in it. I was like, maybe this isn't safe, you know, like I'm used to the British standard. I don't know, this is a recipe for disaster, and you always hear horror stories. But then I just remember going at full speed in the Sahara Desert and absolutely loving it. To the point where my husband was like, come back, like you're moving off the trail into the middle of the desert. But I'm more than happy to do stuff like that and say YOLO.
I'm glad that sounds very exciting. I don't think I would have done it. I'm scared of spiders, so I don't think I would risk my life like this.
I would love to do that. I would absolutely love to do
I
that.
can tell you would.
I'll take it as a compliment.
It's very good, very good, very exciting. I'll have my final question because we only have a couple of minutes for the end of the show, and I think this ties up with the next half of our show in terms of Muslims in the workplace. So Farah, I'm going to ask you, would you rather achieve all your career goals but have no time for family, or have a fulfilling family life but never achieve your career ambitions?
Wow, that's a tough choice. I feel like if you do all your career first, would you be lonely? You wouldn't have any family members around? You wouldn't have your own family? That's a tough choice.
Samra, do you have your thoughts? I'll give Farah some time to think about it.
I used to think that like focusing on my career and achieving everything, not achieving everything, sorry, but like maybe just putting my career first in everything would be the best thing. But actually, the more that I've worked and went through, like now I've just reached 30, and you know what, my work isn't my personality. You know, you switch careers. So, well, in my position, I've switched companies, and I can change the path of my career very, very quickly. And you know, as much as you spend like maybe those hours during a week with your employees, your coffin, and your grave doesn't say like best employee. It will say mother, sister, like friend. And I think it's also the community that you build around you that become your family, friends that become family along the way too. So I would rather opt for having a life maybe that has more family and community and the people element rather than the career. And that's just my take on where I am.
I think those points are very pertinent. I think a lot of people who are starting off their career might be quite surprised by this, but actually I very resonate with that. Luckily for the listeners, we will be talking about this in the next half, so we do see you in 5 minutes or so, and please do join us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Darkness fell upon Medina tonight. People cried, for God had given his beloved messenger a choice. For so long he had struggled, now he'd won the hearts of the best believers, a generation so strong. That moment he drew back the curtain and he gazed upon those he loved the most, and he smiled, his face was shining like the moon. There was nothing more beautiful than the light he brought to this world. Looking back now over 23 years, his message changed the world. People living lost in the wilderness, darkness overall. He came to revive the dead hearts he awoke. He brought justice, peace, and love with amazing words from God that he spoke. He drew back the curtain and he gazed upon those he loved the most, and he smiled, and he smiled.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Sisters Speak. You're here with me, Mariam. Also joined with us is Alia, Farah and Samra. The first half we just discussed our thought of the week, and we just discussed our thoughts on different would you rather questions. But in this half we'll be talking about our main topic, which is Muslims in the workplace. As we mentioned in the first half, the reason why we chose this topic is because we think it's very pertinent in terms of exploring how I think it's very pertinent in exploring how, as Muslim professionals, how we navigate the workplace, but also highlighting the challenge that comes across due to our identities. So I'm going to start off the show by asking Samra the first question, which is, can you share with us your journey into your current position and some key milestones that helped you to excel in your career?
Yes, thank you for that, Mariam. So my journey began when I was probably 18, 19 years old, and I decided to go to business school, but I wanted to do something quite broad. So I chose international business with professional experience. So I did a year in placement, and then I still didn't know what I wanted to do, so I applied for a graduate scheme where I got a rotation of different jobs. So I got to work in product management, strategic sales, inside sales, and funnily enough, I applied for this marketing position for 2 years in a row, and I managed to get it on the third year, alhamdulillah. And then I kind of have just stuck to that at the moment for the last couple of years. And alhamdulillah, it's been a great journey. And some of the milestones that I've had is the people that have helped me along the way. There was a experience that I had to shadow a trainer at Morgan Stanley when I was 17 or 18, and that was probably the final straw for me to know that I was definitely going to want to work in the corporate space. And that opportunity changed my life, to get a glimpse into the working space, as well as the placement year that I did at IBM. So yeah, I think in addition to that, some of the other milestones that I've had is the mentors that I've had, the people I've met along the way, and just like also being open to the world's opportunities and the corporate space. It's not as rigid as people think, so you can adjust your career as you like.
I think that's what an incredible accolade for your CV in terms of what you have achieved. I think I'm very excited to kind of delve more into that. But I think on the point of people's misconception about having a specific trajectory, and how if you do a certain degree you must pursue a career in that. Can you discuss a little bit more on that in terms of, is there scope to pivot from one area to another, and how can young people reconcile that, or young professionals?
So that's a very fair question. So I only have an undergraduate, which I completed in international business. I've thought about doing a master's or an MBA, but I don't know what that specific subject might be, but I want to commit myself to that higher education at the moment. And then my advice would be, bottom line, there's transferable skills. You can learn everything in this world, barring motivation probably, that has to come from within. So I've even met people that are like pharmacists, doctors, switched over to the corporate space, or like people that have worked in the corporate field even engineers, and then have switched over to dentistry or something, because again, it's just those transferable skills. It's communication, professionalism, project management, and throughout different, I think graduate schemes are great, as well as maybe at university keeping an open mind in what you study. But even then, if you had like a marketing degree, it doesn't limit you to working in other parts of the corporate space. And now there's like endless training available. You can even see skills on TikTok if you search it up. I've seen some cool things on there, even government courses that are completely free in the UK, where you can just literally learn from scratch, even coding, setting up your own business, etc. So I think the resources are there, and it isn't as rigid as we think. And that probably comes from previous generations that have maybe had like a set steps and routes into it and kind of followed that path of 50, 60 years of working. Whereas I think this generation will keep switching it up. And it's great to be a part of that, honestly. It's always quite exciting not knowing where my life might end up.
I think those are very important points, and I think one of the skills that you have to develop when you're in the working world is to be agile. And in order for you to do that is to be able to recognize what is serving you and what isn't, and where you can improve. And just trying new things is very underrated. I think people don't realize that it's okay to fail and it's okay to try new things. Some things will work for you, some things won't, but that's how you kind of figure out what suits you best and what you enjoy. Farah, I'm going to ask you the same questions about your journey. You worked in telecommunications, you worked in consultancy, so can you just share your story with us?
Yeah, sure. So I work within the cybersecurity industry. So I graduated in 2017 with a degree in computer security and forensics. I actually struggled to find a graduate job or a graduate scheme for about 2 years. So it was 2 years of persevering and applying constantly until I managed to land a graduate scheme at Colt, where I met Samra actually. And so I was on a grad scheme, but it was specific to cybersecurity, so it was rotating across different areas in cybersecurity, from business continuity to risk, and to physical security as well. And then from there, that was about 2 years, just over 2 years, and then I moved into the consulting industry, where I've worked in 2 different consulting firms. My previous job was as an information security analyst, and I'm currently now doing auditing, so it's information security auditing, so vastly different to things that I've been doing previously.
And I think it's really important to kind of make that point that you can pivot. And
Yeah.
I think there's this whole trending tweet on a pivot to tech, where people were coming from medicine and different industries and they wanted to pivot to tech. And I think those kind of those kind of things are now quite reoccurring in terms of how people view the work kind of stream in the workforce. But on the note, in terms of your experiences, I think one of the things I want to kind of focus on is that 2-year period, because I think a lot of the times, especially I think with LinkedIn, we always kind of share the successes, but people don't really talk about the struggles. And I think even for myself, it took me around 2 years as well to land my first real job, and that was due to COVID. And I think one of the things that people undermine is mentorship, and I want to kind of discuss that a little bit further. But I think in terms of perseverance, and what kind of tangible things were you doing to make sure that you didn't deplete in terms of your motivation, but also how did you make sure that you were keeping yourself abreast of different skills and making sure that you're going to be you're ready for the workforce?
So first, I had the motivation in the sense that I wanted to do a grad scheme, and I was very dead set on getting a grad scheme. I didn't want to take on any other entry level role or just kind of move over to a generic IT role. It was what I wanted to do, and so I was focused on getting that goal. And so I was constantly applying for roles like that. But in the meantime, GDPR was a big thing at the time. So I took a course in GDPR, and then ended up working at a smaller consultancy firm doing GDPR for them. And then here in Luton, a local firm here doing GDPR for them here as well. And those skills that I learned, you'd be surprised how closely related data protection and information security are. So I do feel like the skills that I had learned from those jobs and from that course really helped me be able to get that graduate scheme in cybersecurity, as it was a skill set that not many people had at the time. And it was quite new, and so when I was doing my interview there was a lot of questions regarding that, from what I remember. So there was a keen interest in that. So, you know, just because my degree wasn't in that, or, you know, or it wasn't, you know, it wasn't the exact path into the career that I wanted, it was still like a stepping stone into that. So maybe take a step back, look what courses you can do or skills that you need that would still help you in the career that you want to go into, and see if you can get a role in that or do a course in that can help you further down the line.
I think it's really important, the point that you made in terms of understanding what the bigger picture is. And I think it's very easy to have a one-dimensional view, especially if I'm fixated on an outcome. However, I think it's important to recognise that there's many directions to get to that outcome, and perhaps you persevered one way and it's not working for you. It just means you need to redirect yourself. And I think the point that you made on learning what skills are actually very pertinent at that time is very important, because it gives you leverage, and when you are doing interviews, it makes you stand out. For instance, coding, even communication skills, all these kind of things, you have to show how can you add value to the team, because most workplaces, they want someone that can create value, and there's someone that can create convenience and someone that problem solve. Those are kind of the main requisites of any kind of team, because you want to be indispensable. So thank you for sharing those. I think those are really insightful remarks. I think one thing I want to discuss, because we are talking about Muslims in the workplace, and I think identity is very important when we're thinking about navigating the workforce. The concept that I want to kind of discuss is the idea of assimilation and integration. And I think there's often a discussion about the difference between assimilating and integrating, but I want to kind of discuss how does this impact Muslims in the workplace. And Samra, I'm going to hand it to you for you to discuss this.
So assimilation is essentially giving up your values and then adopting what in front of us, I suppose. And whereas integrating is still sticking to what you can and having your core values, and then somehow still meandering your way, I guess, through the environment that you're in. And it is an important question, especially I think for Farah and I when we work in the corporate space, because I don't know how it is for everyone's workplace, but in the corporate world, in my experience, it sadly heavily circulates around alcohol. Socials involve being, you know, going to a bar, going to a pub, how often you go to these networking events that are heavily on that. And then in addition to that, like some of the lifestyles, and especially living in the West, it's not an easy thing. So I think, again, for me early on, having those early work experiences during my summers at university as well as my placement year, I realised how quickly those kind of environments don't align with my personal beliefs. And so I had to find a way to work through that. And one of the things that I did was, for example, at work parties, depending where they were, if they were in-house, so I would only stay for like an hour, show my face, try and walk around the room, speak to key stakeholders, work around that, and then, you know, leave and go about my evening, so that as the night unravels with these kind of events, the space also changes and can be quite uncomfortable to be around. Equally as well, like I found the balance in vocalizing to my managers about my personal beliefs and values and the lifestyle that I might lead, so that they can then create a space for me to integrate fairly. And I think a graduate scheme was ideal for that, because there's people of the similar age that had come out of university, they're far more aware and maybe more woke of like different needs of colleagues, such as people who don't drink alcohol, whether Muslim or not, and how they could create events to cater around that, as well as, you know, even on-site at offices, requesting and highlighting the importance of halal food at work events. So, and then even Farah was my colleague at work that told me that there was a prayer room downstairs, which I was unaware of. So even that, and you know, I suppose there is a balance. It's hard, but you can find it.
Absolutely. I think having that sense of belonging is really important for anyone to have a place of work where they are thriving rather than just surviving. And I think, Farah, what I want to ask you is, what's been your experience in terms of navigating this assimilation versus integration?
For me, my graduate scheme was actually a really, really good example of this. When I had joined, my manager already knew I was Muslim because he had interviewed me and he'd seen me wear a scarf. So when I joined, he was like, he had said that he wants to take me out for lunch, and he's like, I've been searching for an hour trying to find halal food, but I can't find anything. And I thought I was so shocked by that, because I was like, he's been looking, like trying to find halal food, and then he's like, well, I can't find anything, well, we can go to Subway. You can get something vegetarian. And then, so it was like that open mind, and then when he realised, he was like, oh, you probably need to pray. So he's the one who went and showed me where the prayer room was. And then he was like, oh, like, I know another girl who's Muslim, and that was Samra. And he's like, well, I'll introduce you to Samra, because then you'll have another friend that's Muslim, and she can show you where the things are in the prayer room. So it was a very good experience in that sense. Like, there was a lot of support from him. And he obviously knew that, there are times that we pray, and so he, was happy for me to just take the 5 minutes, go and pray and come back. He never questioned that. So that was really fresh for me. Like, he was quite a young manager, I think he was in his early 30s, so that was quite nice. And since then, in my consulting firms, there's large Muslim networks, and so I feel like a lot of the groundwork has been done thanks to those Muslim networks. So people already know. It was just a case of me just saying to my manager, I'm just going to pop out for 5 minutes just to go pray, and oftentimes they're accommodating and they'll let you. So in that sense, I've been quite lucky.
I think a recurrent thing between both of you is vocalizing what your needs are, and I think it's really important to have those dialogues with your management chain. And also, I think a lot of the times these management chains, they're a bit worried about having these conversations, because they want to be sensitive. If they're good management chains, they want to be sensitive to you, but they don't know how to confront this. So for you to move forward, I think the onus is, of course, on the management chain to open that conversation, but I think a lot of the times the responsibility does fall on ourselves, and it shouldn't be the case. I think management should have cultural competence to understand and have training with unconscious bias to understand that people have diverse needs. But I think we haven't come to that space yet, and so therefore, as Muslims in the workplace, we have to take that initiative to make sure that we're leaving the groundwork, so then the future generation are able to comfortably pray and comfortably be unapologetic about their faith, and comfortably be able to be in socials. I think understanding different needs. For example, I think, especially when you're in the corporate space, when thinking about dietary needs, one example is halal food, and then you think about veganism. Veganism is something that's really, it's pertinent from all kind of aspects, and I think people are more aware of this because, in terms of animal rights, but at the same time, they're not understanding different ideologies in terms of Muslims. So I think it's really trying to kind of vocalize that. But I think one of the things that I feel that perhaps people generally might feel that vocalizing your needs may impede you from securing certain milestones in your work progression. And how do people reconcile that? Because if you seem the kind of individual that seems less affable, or isn't someone that assimilates, then you seem that you're kind of regarded as a difficult one. So how do you kind of navigate those feelings, Samra, and have you ever experienced it?
Yeah, I have. In my previous employer, that was an issue that I actually eventually just left the job. And it was a situation where I didn't attend the work drinks because they were always at pubs and bars, and I don't go to those places. And I had made clear that I would prefer some adjustment where needed. And that wasn't catered for. And then it did get raised as well. I remember there was once a comment that said that, you're not mixing in well with the culture here. And I had asked my manager to elaborate on that, and she couldn't. So I understood what that meant. And there was other comments here and there, which sometimes even related to Palestine, for example, because alhamdulillah I went and I came back, and it's hard to not talk about it once you've been. And I remember a sales manager had said to me, you talk about racial equality and social injustice, and he compared it to his passion for Formula One. And he had told me that not everyone would basically be interested to listen to it. So a lot of comments had accumulated over this period of time. I was only there for less than a year. But I decided that it went against everything that I believed in. I said Hasbi Allah, and I handed in my notice and left. I did report it at the time to internal HR, and I made sure that any interview that I did after that period, I would ensure from the start that this is who I am. I will unapologetically speak up for social injustice, racial equality. I'm also Muslim. I don't leave that at the door when I enter work, especially as a human being and in marketing. Those skills and that kind of experience is very beneficial in communication to different audiences. So it depends how you play it. But yeah, I think I've become very comfortable in not compromising my values, but equally knowing that Allah will find me an employer and put me on a path, inshallah, that's best for me. And at the end of the day, Allah does know best, and you know, if you have contentment in that, it can really help. And that was a struggle to go through. I just want to be clear, it's not easy to go through that thinking and kind of let go and have to let go. But alhamdulillah, I got there. And now, as I said, I work for a non-profit. My manager, it was very easy actually. Just the week before Ramadan, I actually, funnily enough, wrote him an email with 4 or 5 points. I was like, listen, I don't work after 5 anyway. You've never made me, but I won't be because it's Ramadan. I've got family events. It's you know, iftar, it will be Tarawih. And I'd also mention that I'll have sleepless nights. He actually I wrote him a bit of a lengthy email. He just wrote back saying, Samra, it's flexible working, do what you want. And he was like, I completely accommodate this. And he had ensured that I wouldn't have to commute to London for that entire month, and adjusted all of our team meetings. And that's an English man. That's not even someone of from the Muslim faith. But the fact that he did that, I applaud him for his leadership and his awareness in making sure that my needs are accommodated.
I think that's really important, and thank you for sharing those experiences. I think I resonate with that very, very much in terms of making the decision to whether you are going to have to balance between being unapologetic about your values and thinking about your career progression. And I think you just have to take the leap of faith and realize that actually, are you going to be happy when you're being morally conflicted? You're never going to be happy. And I think that's why it's really important to rebuild that faith within yourself and be very unapologetic about your identity. But one thing that I wanted to discuss, and we are in the very, very end of the show, which is quite sad, is about the role of allies. And I think Samra just discussed how her management training is not from a Muslim descent or Muslim background. I want to just ask Farah, how can non-Muslim colleagues act as allies to create a more inclusive and supportive environment?
So like I said, having these open discussions, having these networks at your work, whether they're diversity networks or these Muslim networks where you can go and learn from, and having training. But I also think that, the individual itself should be open. You're Muslim, and at the end of the day, this life is temporary, and you're not going to change your values just because of a job. And I think being open about that and saying, I need to pray during Ramadan, I might need flexible hours, and just being in a nice way, just explaining the situation. Oftentimes people are accommodating, and if they're not, then like Samra said, then you need to evaluate whether that is the best decision for you to stay there, and whether they're going to support you or not, and if it's better for you to just leave.
I agree, and I think for me personally, what I've seen in my own career is that when I took the leap of faith, I feel like Allah elevated me, and I ascended to something far more greater than what I was at the beginning. And I think just having good thoughts about Allah is really, really important. I think one of the things is just really networking. Broaden your network, because you really need mentorship, especially when you're navigating careers and reaching out to Muslims, using LinkedIn as a tool to be able to reach out to people who are in career positions that you want to go to. I think it's something that we really undermine, and I think having those communication skills and really really persevering to kind of build that network and paving that path for yourself.
And even in your company, if there's someone that's Muslim that you think that in the position that you want to be in, maybe just reach out to them and have a conversation and say, what steps did you take to get to this position? What challenges did you face, and how can I overcome those challenges? And kind of have a mentor relationship with that person, because they're Muslim as well, and they're in the position that you want to be in, maybe in 5, 10, 15 years time.
Yeah, and I think and in addition to that, I think thinking about it doesn't your mentor necessarily does not need to be Muslim as well. I think we're talking about allyship. There are people that are willing to help you irrespective of what background or ideology that they attribute to you, and I think that's something we should also discuss, because we don't want to have tunnel vision. And actually, in a way, when you're having those conversations with mentors who are not from your faith, actually that will trigger some thinking about them and their policy thinking in the future when they are empowering young people or just people in general. Samra, I have a question for you. What advice would you give young Muslims professionals entering the workforce today, particularly in navigating and excelling in a multicultural environment?
Definitely, work hard, stay committed. As part of being a Muslim as well, we add our value to this world by being disciplined in our work and our contributions to this planet. And inshallah, they're great ones. We work for ethical companies or ethical jobs to do that. And I would also say that don't compromise on your values. It can be very hard, and I sympathize with that, because you may feel that you're being pulled back down in the network ladder, or you may not be progressing at a rate compared to someone who may go to bars, may go to parks, drink, etc. But equally, as much as Farah rightfully points out, this dunya is very temporary, and moments is this is not worth the akhirah. And that comes with time to also learn and go through that. And thankfully, alhamdulillah, we live in a time, I would say, to reassure like younger people that we are becoming more aware of different needs, and people are more welcoming and adjusting to that, especially these Gen Z and millennial managers. So I would just say that at the end of the day, you have to go to Allah knows best, and He will also plan. You can only do your best. Trade loads of tahajjud, hopefully, if you need to, and that should guide you and help you in what's best for you, and that should work out, inshallah. And sorry, and what you had also mentioned about mentoring and taking opportunities that are available to you.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I should mention as well, don't isolate yourself. I think especially when you're confronted with these kind of challenges, it's really important to be part of a community, and don't go through all of these challenges alone. I think if you're experiencing it, it's very likely that someone else on your team, or someone within your directorate, or someone within your organization that probably has been through this and they've overcome it. So don't be afraid to reach out to people and have these conversations. I think isolating yourself and alienating yourself, it won't serve you. And I think I can empathize as well that it's very difficult to articulate sometimes what you feel, because sometimes it's intangible and you kind of undermine your own experiences. But I think having a strategy in place is really important. So if you know that you want to have a certain career progression, and you feel like the cards are against you and you don't feel that there's a tangible steps in place, then you need to just redirect yourself. So I think those kind of points are really important. But Farah and Samra, thank you so much for joining us today. Those are really important points that we discussed, and we look forward to having you again, inshallah, on this show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.